Ponder gets protection, takes a shot down the field, and has a man wide open. End zone ahead, touchdown, 98 yards.
Ponder rolling, going deep and open. Chariot's right, touchdown Vikings.
All right, we are back for another episode of Under the Number. Today we are joined by Christian Ponder. You'll remember him from his days playing quarterback at Florida State and in the NFL with the Vikings. Also spent time with the Broncos, the Raiders, and the Niners. He's now got a new venture he's working on. He's the founder and CEO of The Post. We will get into all the details of that. But Christian, thank you so much for jumping on the show today.
Yeah, of course, Brian. Appreciate you having me, man.
So we'll jump into The Post and cover it in detail, but just rewinding a little bit, I'm currently sitting about 30 miles from where you went to high school. Talk a little bit about your youth and high school kind of athletic upbringing and maybe fast forwarding all the way to your recruiting experience and how you ended up at Florida State, because I know you had some connections there.
Yeah. So obviously Texas was a great place to grow up from a sports perspective. And I'm one of three boys. I had two brothers. I was right in the middle. Grew up on a great street of a bunch of kids where we actually played outside and didn't just play video games inside. So it was like, it was very much the era of sports all the time, but sports all the time is a fun thing. Now, there's a whole other conversation on what sports all the time means now and how crazy it is for youth sports. That's a whole other conversation. Won't dive into my feelings around that, but it was a great place to grow up. My dad played football in college at Florida State, hence the Florida State connection and what you alluded to. My mom was a great athlete as well, and sports were always an important part of our lives. And I grew up playing everything, basketball, hockey, football, soccer, lacrosse, did a kids triathlon, a bunch of things, anything my parents would let me do. And it's funny about football. I played 1 year of Little League or whatever, Pee Wee, and I actually hated it. I wanted to be the quarterback. At that age, if the coach's son wants to be the quarterback, he's the quarterback, and they stuck me at tight end. And at that age, that's the sixth offensive lineman. And our coach honestly was a jerk, and he was cussing us out, even though we're little 8, 9-year-olds. And I knew it was bad when my dad, who grew up in rural Georgia, loved football because it was give him the opportunity to be the first person to go to college in his family and took it very seriously, actually let me quit because I think he saw this coach is going to ruin football for my son. And actually it was the only thing he ever let me quit. Baseball was my number one sport growing up, the sport that I loved the most. Picked football back up in middle school, was a backup quarterback, was on the B team, 7th grade, backup A team quarterback, played a lot on defense. And fortunately, I had a break in freshman year of high school where the quarterback, who was the starter in 8th grade, same class as me, was a great athlete. They put him a receiver because they wanted to be on varsity, which gave me the opportunity to be the freshman quarterback at our high school and really developed and got to a point where in high school in Texas, football is way more important probably than it should be. And if I was going to be the varsity quarterback, I wasn't really allowed to play another sport. And so definitely baseball was out of the picture because it meant I was going to miss spring practice. And I was a shortstop in baseball. There was another kid in my class, Scott Lawson, who was very good. He actually got a full ride to go play at University of Miami. So the writing on the wall for me was baseball is probably not my future. Football, I'm definitely getting better at, and kind of went all in. Started 2 years on the varsity level. Had a crappy junior year, to be honest with you. We were basically like a wing tee offense, ran the ball a lot. I threw a bunch of interceptions when we threw the ball. It was the very early stages of spread offenses at the high school level. And so we had practices of spread offense every now and again. I think it was like the 8th game of the year. We decided suddenly in the middle of the game, we're going to switch from a wing tee offense to running the spread offense. And it got to the point where I got to throw the ball a lot more my senior year, but had enough film. We didn't have a lot of guys get recruited out of my high school. My dad pieced together my own highlight tape, put it on a DVD, sent it out to 119 Division I schools in the mail, and really kicked off my recruiting process for me after my junior year. Somehow, based off of that film, I got one offer from University of North Carolina. Was the first offer that I got. Got invited to a bunch of camps that summer, had a bunch of great camps, and offers started rolling in. My eye was always on Florida State. Both my parents went there. And we went there every fall. We'd visit games, and my dad's from an hour north of Tallahassee, so we just spent a lot of time there. And it was where I was most comfortable, wanted to go. And as soon as they offered my summer before my senior year, I said yes. And it's the only recruiting visit I ever went on. And from an official visit standpoint. And yeah, and then that's how I ended up at Florida State. And it was a great opportunity for me. I got to play for Coach Bowden, who's one of the best football coaches of all time. And I was his last starting quarterback before Jimbo Fisher took over, and I was Jimbo's first starting quarterback at Florida State as a head coach. I was to this. They only got better after I left. They won a national championship like 3 years later. So, but it was awesome. I had a great time there.
It's pretty incredible to have played for the same head coach in Bobby Bowden as your dad.
Yeah. Not a lot of guys can say that, especially now. I think when it comes to longevity, especially the coaching level, it doesn't happen often. I think, for Coach Bowden, there was like 3 or 4 families that had that opportunity to have a dad and a son play for him. And, he was there for a long time and had such a tremendous positive influence on guys. He was a father figure for so many people that came through that program. I had the opportunity to go to his funeral after he passed away a few years ago, and they did it in the big convention center in Tallahassee, and it was full. And I think it was full because of all of he said such a major impact on all these people's lives. And it was an amazing opportunity for me to be able to go play for Coach Bowden, and obviously his influence on my father as well.
By the time you found yourself playing in your first Florida State game, or your first Florida State home game, did it feel like just an out-of-body experience, or were you locked in and had enough time to kind of understand what it was going to be like? And having gone to the visits and having your dad having been there, was it essentially, oh my gosh, I've been waiting for this moment? Or did it feel like, how is this possible? I'm blacking out in the moment of, running out of the tunnel the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was definitely some level of the latter, like some excitement, some feelings of like, hey, this feels very surreal. Especially, I think, I graduated high school in December. I graduated early, enrolled at Florida State in January, and got to play in the spring game. And for some reason, the coaches let me get reps with the first team that first year for me. And so I think it was very surreal to be out there, ones versus ones, as who should still be a senior in high school. And that moment was very surreal, in Doak Campbell Stadium, now Bobby Bowden Field. That was definitely surreal. And then, I played my first game and start. We had an injury. I was a third string quarterback my redshirt freshman year. I was third string. Someone got suspended from the team for missing practice. I was elevated to the number 2. Number 1 goes down with a concussion, middle of a game at Virginia Tech in a Thursday night game. And that was my first time being thrown to the Wolves. And that was a surreal experience. Like, holy crap, I'm now playing. It went from, 0 to 100 real quick, and played well in that game until like the last 3 drives. It was like ended. I mean, I played really well. We ended up going ahead against Virginia Tech, who was ranked at the time at Virginia Tech. And then I think my last 3 drives of that game, it was like fumble, interception, and that was it. And didn't play the rest of that season, and then ended up winning the starting job that next year. But yeah, it was surreal, and it was. I know my dad had a lot of pride in me playing there. I had a great opportunity. It was a great time, and a lot of great teammates and great coaches. And yeah, look, it was really a dream come true for me to play at Florida State under Coach Bowden, and it was awesome to don that uniform.
I can imagine life's pretty good when you're the big man on campus at FSU. What are what are specific things that stand out, whether it's one-liners they gave you or things, kind of mantras that they repeated that you remember and that have stayed with you from each Bobby Bowden and Jimbo Fisher?
Well, I think with Coach Bowden's whole theme and how he coached his players was, it's not just about you and what is your purpose outside of playing ball. And obviously he was a very strong man of faith, and he talked about that a lot. But I think whether you're someone that has a faith or not, like having this sense of purpose of why am I even here is, and now, we talk a lot about this at the Post, but like even from a sustained motivation standpoint and anything that you're doing, operating with a sense of purpose, provides sustained motivations, provides joy, especially in kind of this different world that we're living in now. So I think that, operating with a purpose on the field outside of football was important. And then Jimbo, it was always about, especially the quarterback position, just leadership. I mean, setting expectations, having higher expectations for yourself than other people can ever have for you was so important. I think being a leader, he always talk about leadership being earned. And that's so true, whether that's at work or in sports. It's not a position that's just given to you. You have to earn that through your work ethic and setting the example. And if you're going to be the person that elevates yourself or is elevated to a business and a leadership, you're really like in a position of service, and you do need to outwork others, and you do need to set that tone that, the most pressure's on me, but I'm going to work the hardest to be prepared for that. And that was very much, I mean, he definitely was the hardest by far on the quarterbacks. And that's exactly why he wanted to make sure that, we understood the ramifications, the responsibility of being the leader on the field in the locker room. And yeah, I think a lot of those leadership teachings were really important for me. And I still think, Jimbo's one of the best coaches. And look, $75 million to sit at home for a few years is a pretty good gig. He'll land, I think when that's done, I suspect he'll be out coaching again and will be successful.
For sure. On the topic of leadership, you ended up being the 12th overall pick in the 2011 NFL draft, going to the Vikings. It was also a lockout year, notably. So you couldn't start really practice with the team until being thrown in with training camp. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I do wonder, it's one thing when you show up as a freshman in a college program and if you're the big quarterback recruit, establishing yourself as a leader, maybe within your class, and hopefully relatively quickly, even among the older guys, is easier in that the oldest guy on the team is maybe 5 years older than you if he's a fifth year. More likely 4, right? And in the NFL, you show up, you're 21, 22 years old, you're assumed to be this leader upon arrival, but there are people who have had, 12, 13, 14-year NFL careers in that locker room.
Grown men with kids, man. Yeah.
Grown men with kids, totally different phases of life. How did you navigate that? And did you have like mentors who were kind of helping you and saying, hey, this is the way to approach it. Don't come on too strong, but you also cannot look weak. How did that play out?
Yeah, look, I think it goes back to what I talked about with Jimbo. Like you earn that position, you earn it by showing up and working hard. And yeah, look, you never want to be early on when you're younger or you're new to the room, the guy that has the loudest voice. I think you earn the opportunity to voice your opinions. And so that, that came down to like stupid things like, when it was freezing outside, not wearing long sleeves, like, especially in Minnesota, like setting the tone of like, hey, I'm a tough guy, or I'm going to earn your respect. Like you had to go out there and earn it. And, I'm not saying I even did that great of a job at it, but I think that was my mindset, was to work hard and to earn that respect or that opportunity to have some influence in that locker room. But you're right, it is a different dynamic between a 5-year age gap and a 12-year age gap. And, and there were some strong leadership personalities in that room. And also it was different. Like you said, it was lockout year. And they immediately brought in, when the lockout ended, right before, 3-4 days before training camp started, they wanted to sign a veteran quarterback. And so they brought in Donovan McNabb to be that presence. And then, of course, like obviously then the leadership, that role is cast on Donovan and less on me. And so that was a different dynamic as well, that once they signed Donovan, he was the starting quarterback right away. And obviously he took on much more leadership role than I did. And it was more me kind of watching and learning from via osmosis while still trying to invest in building those relationships as well.
Well, I hope you got some bonus points if you really did go sleeveless coming from Tallahassee. That's pretty strong.
I did. There was one time it didn't work out. I mean, this was actually not my freshman year. This was, they tore down Minnesota Stadium to build a new stadium,
right.
One of the old Metrodome. And we played outside at University of Minnesota for 2 years. And there was one game where we played, it might have been the Jets or the Eagles at home. And the high was like 12 degrees. And I went out there in warm-ups like, I'm not wearing sleeves. Dude, I couldn't throw the ball. I couldn't feel my arm, man. My arm was so numb, I had to go back in and put sleeves on because that was a mistake.
Yeah. Do you remember your first time going up and meeting Adrian Peterson, who was at arguably the peak of his career right when you showed up?
Yeah.
As everyone, any real football fans have probably heard, one, did he try to break your hand when he shook it the first time? And two, what was that even like? I mean, when I was at Stanford, I remember so well, vividly, the first day before training camp started, all the preferred walk-on freshmen, like bottom of the totem pole, we show up, and Christian McCaffrey comes up to each of us, the clear leader of the team, and comes up and he's like, hey, everyone, I'm Christian. We're like, we know that. Is that kind of how it goes when you step into an NFL locker room? There's guys who you've been watching since high school, and all of a sudden they're a teammate.
For sure. Yeah, it is, especially in Texas where Adrian grew up, and he's not that much older than me. But I remember watching, he went to, I think, Palestine High School. And I just remember, like, it was going viral before even viral was a thing. But, like, seeing his highlight tape in high school, like, it was the most absurd thing. And then, obviously, being very familiar with the UT-OU rivalry when he was at Oklahoma, and obviously a tremendous player. And first of all, I don't think he ever actually intends to break people's hands. I think he's just that strong and intensive a guy that that's just his natural handshake. Um, but again, like it was such a weird dynamic because we had no interaction during the offseason, right? Because there were no OTAs in the lockout. Some of us tried to get together and we worked out at IMG if you guys came in, but it was a small group. So really that first time we got to meet Adrian, it's like we're just in the whirlwind of training camp, and it was just, very casual, like, Adrian, Christian, good to meet you. Like, and then it's down to business because, that was that time. There was just no time to really introduce ourselves and ingratiate ourselves with each other. It was like, look, you were in training camp, obviously, like it's a grind. And that's how it was. That's how it was with everyone, basically. It's like you went 0 to 100, at that time. And obviously lockout was just brought a totally different dynamic than what usual off seasons and rookie years look like.
So you're in the NFL from 2011 through 2016. What was the high point of your NFL experience? And two-part question, what was it that you maybe underestimated the most about being in the NFL?
Yeah, I think my high point for sure were, my second year we made the playoffs. It was obviously Adrian's MVP year. He had a great year. I had a great start to the year, kind of had a crappy middle part of the year, then finished really strong. And we won 4 or 5 games in a row to close out the year, 3 of them on the road to make the playoffs. But that last game, week 17, game 16, we beat Green Bay at home in Aaron Rodgers' prime. And I had a really good game. And yeah, got to, we beat them, and then we had to play them in the wild card the very next week at Green Bay. And I was injured. I couldn't play in the game. But we didn't pick up strong safety blitz or free safety blitz that was not picked up. And I'm throwing a ball over the middle. I take a helmet right to my tricep. And I'm a bleeder, so like I swell. And man, like throughout the whole game, this was like right at the end of the first half, I could just continue to feel my arm swell up. And that next day, for the whole week, I couldn't bend my arm past like this much, it was like barely could bend it at all. And of course, it was my my throwing arm, and I couldn't throw the ball. And so missed out on the one playoff game opportunity that I had. In terms of your second question, what surprised me, I don't, obviously it's hard to have any sort of expectation of what it's like to play in the NFL. So,
and
I don't know if,
sorry, not to cut you off, just to amend the question a little bit. This could be not necessarily specific gameplay. Oh my gosh, the speed of the game was so much or whatever, but like just the business of, at the end of the day, you are an employee of a giant enterprise that is the NFL, and there's a ton that comes with that.
Yeah, I think one thing I was not prepared for was, you're right, the business side of the NFL. It is a revolving door in the locker room. To see guys come and go as often as they did. And it is a different dynamic than college. Now, I think college with NIL and transfer portal is now a lot more like what the NFL was when I experienced it. But my experience in college, you played for your school and you had the same guys in the locker room. Obviously you had guys that graduated, guys that came in, but there was a core group that you stayed with in your class, and the guys that were a year ahead of you and you're behind you that you spent 4 years with. And yeah, you just built deep relationships, and the NFL is so different, especially because you go from being on campus pretty much year round in school to, especially in a place like Minnesota, you're there for the season. 95% of the guys leave and go back to somewhere warm during the off season. You come for OTAs, and the guys are flying back every week. And it's a totally different dynamic, and it's a business, it's a job, and it felt like a job. And especially for me, who dealt with, my junior year in college, I thought I was going to turn pro, had a really great year, ended up having a 3rd-degree separation of my AC joint in my throwing shoulder, the 9th game of the year against Clemson, have surgery. It ends my junior year, do not turn pro, come back my senior year. And because it was my throwing shoulder, like I never felt like I threw the football the same. I had the mindset of like, incredible amount of confidence, for good or for worse, but like I felt like I never could miss on a throw. And then after that, I did not have that same level of confidence. And as you know, as a quarterback, and really in any position in sports, in any real position in leadership, is if you're not operating with a certain level of confidence, you're going to be behind. And always operating in the back of my mind of like, oh, I'm not as good as I once was, had a real impact on my play at the NFL level, especially you go, each from high school to college to NFL, the pressure grows higher and higher. And then when you're talking about millions of dollars in a contract, I just felt a tremendous amount of pressure and not a lot of confidence. And that is a disaster when it comes to performance at the highest level in the NFL, especially the quarterback position. And that's really why I do. I have a lot to be proud of, and was very grateful for the opportunity to play in the NFL and have a career. But I think as athletes, there's always some level of perfectionism. And one of the questions I love to ask people is, do you love to win or do you hate to lose? I definitely hate to lose. And so I constantly think about the things that I wish I would have done better and done differently and changed. And so there's a lot of things of regrets and wishing I did things differently in the NFL to have a better, career than I did, while still trying to be grateful for the opportunity I did have.
And, people who have followed you and have watched sports, frankly, over the last decade and a half, know that your wife was at ESPN for a long time and concurrently with your NFL career, right? So how did you guys turn off football in your personal life when you come home and each of you have spent all day in at least, multiple sports, maybe for your wife, Samantha, but
Yeah.
how did that work? I mean, how do you separate these things?
I don't think we really had to, because we were both fans, like obviously we worked in sports, but we're also fans. So, so when we were together, when I was playing, she was still in college. So she was gone on the weekends, and then, I'm at practice most days, all day, every day. So when I was playing, until the off season, there wasn't a whole lot of time that we spent together. But still, when we did, we're watching Monday Night Football together, we're watching Thursday Night Football together. We were fans and still are fans of the game. So I don't think we really had to ever compartmentalize. And, she's still obviously a wife and still empathetic towards, the ups and downs of my career. And fortunately, again, I think separating it from her being in college and not in the NFL, was somewhat protected from fans who had opinions about how I played. So she didn't have to deal with that a whole lot, which was good. But yeah, we never really had to figure out a way to compartmentalize and separate ourselves from through the dynamics of us being both in football and sports.
So you retired from the NFL in 2016, and from what I understand, the idea for the Post, your new venture, kind of was maybe came about around COVID. So talk a little bit, if I'm correct on my timeline, talk a little bit about that gap, that 2016 to what, when this idea was just a seed of one in your mind, and then what triggered it to, that kind of inflection point of, okay, let's take the leap and pursue this as a real opportunity.
Hung up the cleats, after the 2016 season with the Niners. We moved to New York City in August 2017. We had fallen in love with New York. We'd always talked about finding this opportunity to go live in New York after football was done. And I got my undergrad in finance. I got my MBA at Florida State and was always interested in the financial world. And so it made sense. If we're going to figure out what I'm going to do in life after football, then why not move to the financial capital of the world? And Samantha got the offer to go to do the NFL job with ESPN. So stars lined up for us to go do that. So my original plan was, number one, let's just go talk to a bunch of different people about what they do and different opportunities in finance, and assumed I was going to go into wealth management. And, had a lot of great conversations. And it's funny, a lot of people started pushing me towards, oh, you should go get your MBA. I'm like, but I already have my MBA. And they're like, yeah, but you should get your MBA from Columbia. And then it was like, oh, you should think about, getting your CFA. And it felt like it was very much, hey, you've got to go build out these credentials to qualify yourself for the business world, because you've got to make up for the lost time or the liability potentially of what your professional athletic career was like. And so kind of got a distaste for myself in my mouth for the debt financial services industry. And, went back to football, coached, or not coached. I called a few college football games for ESPN for a season. Then got recruited randomly for a small hedge fund. It was a technical trading firm out of New York. A few people working in a WeWork, and was super interesting. Learned a lot. Very much turned into hey, let's think about raising money from athletes that and was kind of uncomfortable with that. But the more time I spent around the corporate world, the more I realized how out of place I felt. And I knew transitioning out of sports was going to be difficult from a social communal standpoint. Obviously, when you're in sports, you have this really strong built-in community with people who are like-minded, who have similar shared interest systems and value systems and life experience. And athletes have always been my people and my tribe. So I knew walking away from that for the first time, was going to be difficult from that standpoint. And I think what amplified that effect was being in these corporate spaces, realizing, hey, you go from this environment and being around athletes where everyone works extremely hard, is super competitive, is ambitious, is accountable and disciplined and determined and gritty, and have all these qualities that make up what an athlete is. And then in the corporate world, there's a lot of people that have very few of those qualities. And in so many ways, like corporate culture felt like was an antithesis to what sports culture was like. And people don't like feedback, and people are threatened by ambition, and you can work too hard, and it's not about the team, and just a lot of things that were just very different than what I had experienced in sports. So I had this void that just continued to grow and grow, and missing this community that I was a benefactor of for so long. And I tried to fill the void. I started joining some different organizations and clubs in New York to try to fill that void. And nothing ever came close, because nothing was for me as an athlete. I'll always be an athlete. That's so deeply ingrained in who I am. And so when I couldn't find something to belong to, I don't know if you ever heard of Soho House, or if anyone's been to Soho House, but Soho House is a private members club started in London for people in the creative arts. Now they have a bunch of these places all over the place, and they have 3 in New York City. And Soho House was one of those things I joined to try to find something to belong to. And look, they're beautiful spaces and cool people, but not my people. It wasn't my tribe. I didn't feel like I belonged there and felt like I fit in. And so in 2019, I'm sitting in Soho House, feeling out of place, but thinking, hey, what if everyone in here was an athlete? Like that would feel like home for me. And so that's where the idea was planted. The world shuts down because of COVID. You have a lot more time to start thinking about this idea. And at first, right, it was like, how do we take Soho House and make it for athletes? And then start thinking about that more, and felt like, look, if all we did was hang out at a bar, that wouldn't be enough. Athletes are performance-oriented people. Athletes, there's been a lot of data that's come out over the last 10 years that shows the outperformance of athletes versus non-athletes when it comes to performance in business and leadership. Athletes develop soft skills and intangibles, all the qualities I listed before. Those soft skills take time. It takes unique experiences over time. And those unique experiences are traditionally doing hard things, right? Battling through injuries, dealing with loss, suffering through the perseverance of practice and in games and seasons and sports. That develops character. And that character is a massive asset and competitive advantage when it comes to doing anything else in the business world. And so if all we did was hang out and drink at a bar, that would be a shame. And so that's when we started studying things like YPO and EO and Chief and some of these big professional networks that have been around for a long time. And how do we make this community, this idea, more actionized in that sense? And so fortunately, I had a friend of a friend that I became close with. His name's Ryan Darnell. He runs a early stage venture fund called Max Ventures. And Ryan kind of became a thought partner and early on in this process with me. And we bonded because he played college baseball at Middle Tennessee State. And when I told him about this idea, I said, hey, man, this sounds awesome. Would also love to, if you need a thought partner to help you with this, we'd love to help you with this. And we went on this kind of 6-month validation period, and we talked to athletes and people who ran clubs and networks and investors, and got so much validation to go build this. We decided to go build it. And Ryan and Max Ventures ended up incubating the business and wrote the first check and helped us get off the ground. And now here we are today. We launched 2 years ago in April of 2023. We're now closing in on 700 members across the country as of mid-March 2025. And I feel like we're just getting started. And our criteria for the post is anyone who was a college athlete, and anyone who is really interested in taking that mindset to the business world. So our average age member is almost 40 years old. Half our members are VP level and above in business. Age range from mid-20s to mid-70s. Everyone's doing a bunch of different things across different industries in business, but still all unified by that athlete mindset, what we've coined as the athlete operating system. We see it again as this massive advantage that we should continue to invest in and grow and surround ourselves with people to recreate that locker room and team, that environment that we once had that was such a catalyst for our own growth and ambition. And now it's less about sports and performance on a field, and now it's more about business and performance in a boardroom. And it's been really cool to see it all come together.
I mean, it's an incredible community concept. You can just imagine how many lanes and future opportunities will blossom from that, whether it's funds or conferences or shared deals or whatever. I mean, you can imagine what stems from getting all those people into one community, and also, as you're alluding to, providing physical spaces for those meetings and things to take place. So one thing that I'm curious about, you mentioned that you had a friend in venture who was a former athlete, and for people who did play sports growing up or were athletes, this idea clicks immediately. It's not a very hard pitch. But as you also mentioned, when you first get into the corporate world, you felt like a lot of things were the antithesis of the athletic world. And you're speaking to a lot of people where it feels like you're talking to a brick wall, and there's not a lot of understanding happening there. I would imagine that in that fundraising process, you probably had two I mean, maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but you might have been kind of hitting two ends of the spectrum where you either had the former athletes saying, yes, I get it. YPO for athletes, cheap for athletes, let's go. This is what I want. I totally understand the need for community, the continued locker room, the shared values. Get it? Or people being like, what? What are you even talking about? Is this even really a venture backable idea? Like, what are you here with? Is that how it went? Was it kind of one or the other?
Yeah, exactly. And I think everyone who ended up investing were all athletes. So like our lead investors, Will Ventures. Will Ventures
Yeah.
was founded by two Harvard football players, and
Yeah.
Isaiah played in the NFL, was a captain of the Seahawks when they played in the Super Bowl back in 2006, 2005, whenever that was. And FJ Labs is an investor. They're another fund based out of New York City, and our investor from FJ Labs, their partner, ran track and cross country at Penn and was an athlete. And we had an angel check from Andreessen Horowitz, and Jeff Jordan played basketball in college, and another check from Mavron, and they have a person on their team that played tennis at Stanford. And so, yeah, exactly what you said. Like, I think the people that have this background fully understand the community and not only the business opportunity, but the need for this. And I saw the need for it. I built this selfishly for me. And if you had built it, someone else had built this, I would have been a member 7 years ago. And so, yeah, but it was very much like two completely different conversations when you spoke to an athlete and when you spoke to someone who potentially never played sports in their life. It was very different.
Right. Yeah. That'd be a hard sell for someone like
Yeah.
that. So I can actually, I wish I could have been a fly on the wall for some of those pitches to the person, for the person who never picked up a ball of any type in their life.
For sure.
So what does membership get someone? What does the experience look like for the individual member?
Yeah, good question. So there's really two sides of what we do. There is more of the YPO professional network side, and we actually partnered. For those who don't know, YPO stands for Young Presidents Organization. Young Presidents Organization has been around, kind of the pinnacle business network for about 80 years now. They have 47,000 global members. You have to be a CEO, president, managing director with so many employees, so much revenue or assets under management per year to qualify. And then it's like 10, 20, 25 grand a year to be a part of it. But they're known for creating forums, and forums are curated peer advisory groups. As team athletes, most of us, or even if you were an individual sport athlete, you were still in some sort of team environment a lot of the times. You're seeing the value of a team and having people with different perspectives and experiences and expertise. Teams oftentimes are greater than the sum of their parts, and saw the value in investing in something similar. So actually partnered with a guy who's been a part of YPO for over 40 years to help us design what we call our team's experience off the YPO's forums experience. So a team is 8 to 12 individuals that we put together off some of the career stage, life stage, industry, geographic location. They meet every month, allow everyone to have this personal peer of advisors, have conversations with that you may not be able to have elsewhere, lean into the collective wisdom, experiences, perspectives, and accountability of those groups. I think as athletes, there's so much inherent built-in accountability in sports with teammates and coaches. Sometimes we don't have that same level of accountability, and that accountability in sports was such a catalyst for our growth. And so we're trying to tap into some of these same structures that we had in sports to now be catalysts for our business and personal lives. So we have a teams program. We have what we call our collectives program, which are kind of bigger groups that live outside teams that are based off of different interests or industries. So all of our entrepreneurs get together in one collective. Our investors, people, private equity, venture capital, asset managers get in another group. We have one for parents, one for people in the business of sports, one for creatives. We'll keep adding more and more. This makes sense, but they get together on Zoom, have networking opportunities, conversations that are specifically valuable to them within the kind of these micro communities within the post. And I think as athletes, we're perpetually defined by that growth mindset. I think we're always humble enough to say there's always opportunities to improve and get better. And I think we're also competitive and wanting to make those investments. So we want to be the catalyst to that. So we try to bring in workshops and speaker series, providing new opportunities to invest in increasing, skill sets from a business and leadership perspective and new insights. And so we try to run workshops and speaker series, multiple times a month. We have a Slack channel for our digital chat room and locker room kind of space and a membership directory. And then the other side of what we do is more in-person social. So as you alluded to, we have space. So we have one space right now in New York City that we call our Clubhouse. It's a co-working social club lounge space. Every member, whether you live in New York City or not, you end up in New York, everyone has access to the space, but it is our ambition to eventually go build a bunch of these across the country. But right now we have members all over the country. And so we are investing in running a lot of like local city events to help us build kind of a critical mass. So how do we take the 20 members we have in Dallas and make that 300 members over the next year and a half, and then eventually think about, okay, can we build a clubhouse in that space for this membership? So right now we have events going on every month in LA and Phoenix and in Austin and San Francisco and Chicago, Atlanta, DC and Boston, and we're coming to Philly and Nashville and Dallas and Houston and the Florida City soon. And so trying to really invest in these local opportunities. We do an annual conference that we call Summit once a year, where we always try to have something competitive. We call it the Summit Cup because can't bring a bunch of athletes together, not compete. And so we have a trophy that sits in our bar in our clubhouse. It's kind of bragging rights. And we've done a pickleball in Central Park, pickleball tournament in Central Park. We did a golf tournament when we did our summit in Florida 2 years ago. And, I do a bunch of social stuff and have speakers and panels and that type of stuff. And then something we're looking at new this year is taking some retreats. So like I love fly fishing. So we're going to take a group to go fly fishing together in Montana, or another group wants to go rim to rim to rim of the Grand Canyon and is planning that in the fall, or another group wants to have this golf championship and do a tournament. So, just finding ways to have fun and connect everyone and build those relationships that we all, feel like we can invest in and help each other out, support each other and collaborate. And so it's kind of more on what we do.
I love it. It's so cool. And such a like expandable platform. I mean, it seems like it really does feel like if you do this right, you're just at the very, very beginning, which is so cool.
Well, and we, there's a ton of stuff that we want to get to. We imagine, and I think you brought it before, having an internal fund and incubator. We fully believe in the crossover of athletes and especially in entrepreneurship. And so can we invest in athlete-founded companies and help them get off the ground and provide them with advisors? And I think we've been approached several times with, is there a job and hiring platform, because people love to hire athletes and see how advantageous it is. And, can we have, I miss having competitive outlet, having adult sports leagues for our members and a bunch of stuff. So, again, it's been a good start and we're still early and still have a long way to go, but it's been really cool to see it come together in 2 years.
Super cool. All right, wrapping up. I want to hit through a quick lightning round. I'll give you some people and things. We'll go try to get, 1-sentence answers if you can. Get your reactions. Okay.
All right.
Favorite QB growing up?
John Elway.
Bobby Bowden.
Just father figure.
Jimbo Fisher.
Intense.
Adrian Peterson.
Another intense guy. Also cannot throw the ball. He's not, he's very specific in his athletic capabilities, but watch him shoot a basketball or throw a ball. It's not pretty.
It's kind of funny when you see that. That's not totally uncommon for the hyper specialized athletes. My aunt always tells me a story about, she went to Stanford and she was on the volleyball team, and she tells a story about playing catch with Tiger Woods. And she said it was a struggle. It was not. I don't think he really knew what he was doing. He spent a little bit more time swinging a golf club.
Yeah, and that worked out okay for him. But I mean, I'm sure Adrian was a running back. I know he ran track in high school too. It was all about running. So this wasn't really a necessity for him.
Yeah, well, he focused on the right thing.
Yeah, he did all right.
Percy Harvin.
Man, he was talented. I mean, I remember because we played him when he was at Florida and I was at Florida State and obviously at Minnesota. Yeah, he was super athletic, super talented.
Jared Allen.
He's hilarious. Hall of Famer now too. But yeah.
Kyle Rudolph.
Kyle was awesome. We came in together, we were closest. Kyle's great. Now he's doing some awesome stuff with his kind of nonprofit platform, and great guy.
Donovan McNabb.
Donovan, he was interesting. He obviously had a great career, and got to learn some things from him when he was in Minnesota, and
Least favorite away game you played in college?
Least favorite away game I played in college. I'm trying to think of where we got at Oklahoma. We got spanked at OU.
Most electric atmosphere, single game that you recall from your college days?
Oh, there's a number of them. I think my last game at Doak Campbell, we played Florida. Florida State was always an intense rivalry, and obviously Miami too. It was the first time I think we finally broke the streak. They'd won like 6-7 in a row against us, and we finally beat them 31-7 at home against Urban Meyer. So that was awesome.
Biggest freak athlete you ever played with?
Adrian.
Who was the best sneaky athlete that you ever played with? Didn't look the part.
Sneaky athlete. I mean, look, I think you'd say Jared Allen. Jared Allen does not look. He's not the typical body type that you think of, like a Hall of Fame defensive lineman, but he was unbelievable.
Favorite place to fly fish?
Oh, great question. So there's interesting enough, northern Arizona, the Colorado River, before it enters the Grand Canyon, has great fly fishing. You're in these massive, 100-foot cliffs, and then you're on a boat in the river, and that's good spot.
What do you do to get outside right now when you're trapped in Manhattan?
Nothing. Fortunately enough, we're next to Central Park, so we have that. What's great about New York is like, look, we'll go up to Catskills and stuff. In an hour and a half, you can be at the beach. You can be in mountains, very small mountains, but mountains. And but in Manhattan, it's tough, man. It's tough.
The city life. All right. Well, where can people find the Post?
Yeah, so you can check out our website or www.thepost.co, and our Instagram's @thepostteam. But if, always happy to, my email is christian@thepost.co if anyone ever wants to reach out and learn more, and I always try to make myself available to any questions, and that's where you can find us.
All right, well, best of luck, and I hope to be in touch down the road. Thanks so much, Christian.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Brent.